The newsroom was dead quiet. It was past midnight in Washington, D.C., but Diana Leal wasn't sleeping. Her desk was lit only by the soft glow of a secondhand monitor and the blinking red light on her voice recorder. The story had taken over. Her life, and now, after years of whispers and dead ends, something had finally cracked open on live television. She leaned forward, watching the clip again. Tom Cruise walking off The Tonight Show. The way he stared directly at the camera, the weight of his words. And that line, "You just used a code name." It wasn't random. It was deliberate. She scrolled through her encrypted files, searching for a keyword she'd only seen once before. Silent protocol. There it was. A single page, marked internal draft. Buried in a folder labeled Domestic Narrative Control Tier 3, it referenced a media campaign proposal. A series of high-profile films backed by unnamed defense contractors aimed at reshaping public sentiment. During global political shifts, the talent list included actors with national security clearance, something Diana had always assumed was exaggerated or misunderstood. Until now, she whispered to herself, he knew exactly what he was doing. At that same hour, inside a dark conference room at a federal facility in Langley, Virginia, 3 men in suits watched the same footage. One of them, director Alan Crowder, muted the screen. So he said calmly, "It's out." Another man, wearing a headset and reviewing live chatter from social media servers, looked up. The term Echo 7 has been mentioned over 12,000 times in the last 3 hours. Someone's fueling it. The third, a younger analyst, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, permission to ask." Crowder nodded. Was Cruise actually involved? Crowder stared at the paused screen. Tom Cruise, standing, mic on the desk, walking away. He was briefed. "That's all I'll say." The analyst nodded, though his face showed unease. Crowder turned toward the digital map behind him, dots of activity blinking across newsrooms, servers, comment sections. "Containment protocols? Start now," he said. Back in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel sat alone in his dressing room, staring at his own reflection. He still hadn't spoken to anyone since the show ended. The laughter, the cameras, the rhythm of late-night TV, it had all disappeared. He felt like a man who had opened a door without knowing what was on the other side. His phone buzzed. A message from a blocked number. "You weren't supposed to ask about silent protocol." His heart dropped. Jimmy stood up and checked the hallway empty. The producer had already gone home. Security had swept the building twice. Still, his hands were shaking. For years, he'd played the fool on television. It kept things safe, harmless. But tonight, something had slipped into the studio that wasn't part of the script. He sat back down and opened a message from his assistant, sent just before the show. "FYI, legal wants to make sure you skip Q4 on the card." Hot Q4. The fourth question. He'd asked it anyway. About silent protocol. No one had ever told him why to skip it. He clicked into the show's internal script system. The question hadn't been there in the original cue sheet. Someone had inserted it after rehearsal. Quietly, precisely. Meanwhile, Diana Leal was on a video call with a European contactan ex-intelligence translator named Victor, who once processed intercepted diplomatic packets for the EU. His accent was thick, but his voice steady. Echo 7, he said, was used in joint NATO briefings for years, but always in background files, not officially spoken. "What was it?" Diana asked. "A psychological framework. Media modeling. They tried to chart how stories moved, through culture, first in film, then in social media. It became predictive. They said if you can predict emotion, you can predict behavior. That's control." She frowned. Cruise's walk-off. Could it be part of that? Victor shook his head. "No, I think he went rogue." Diana leaned forward. "Then someone's going to come for him." Elsewhere, in a quiet Malibu estate with no guards and no posted address. Tom Cruise stood on his balcony overlooking the ocean. He held a glass of water, not wine, not champagne. He wasn't celebrating. Inside on his desk was a sealed manila envelope. Inside were 3 photographs, one of a military-grade camera crew inside a Hollywood set, one of a redacted actor's contract with the Department of Defense, and one was a picture of Jimmy Kimmel being briefed in a private room before a previous episode. Cruise stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and typed a single text. 2. Diana Leal's subject, ready to talk. TC, the time had come. He wasn't walking away anymore. He was stepping in. The sun had not yet risen over Washington, D.C. But Diana Leal was already inside the secure newsroom at a partner station in underground satellite office used by international journalists when investigating politically sensitive stories. She wasn't alone. Her editor, a weird-looking man named Haroon, stood near the glass wall, holding a cup of stale coffee and reading a printed version of the Echo 7 dossier. "You're telling me Tom Cruise is the leak?" Haroon asked. Diana nodded. Not the source, but the signal. He chose that stage, that moment, that line. Haroon stared at her. And the walk-off? Deliberate. He wanted it to be unignorable. Haroon sighed. "You better have more than just a hunch. Diana, we're not blowing our credibility on an actor's dramatic moment, unless we can prove the system he exposed actually exists." Diana turned her screen. "I have more than a hunch." She pressed play on a recently decrypted video file. The footage showed a military-grade production set. Uniformed officials stood quietly behind civilian filmmakers. On a whiteboard, in the corner of the room, the words Echo 7 were circled in red. The audio was faint, but clear enough. "We control narrative by rhythm. Humor, pain, outrage timed correctly. They bypass critical filters. We don't create opinion, we steer it." Un's expression changed. "This isn't entertainment anymore." "No," Diana said. "It never was." In Los Angeles, Jimmy? Kimmel hadn't slept. His phone was off. He'd left his house and was now inside an unmarked black SUV en route to a secured warehouse outside Burbank. The message he'd received, "You weren't supposed to ask about silent protocol," had triggered memories of a contract he'd signed years ago. A deal for creative collaboration with a now-defunct PR agency. At the time, it sounded like a branding opportunity. In hindsight, it felt like something else. His driver, a no-nonsense woman named Cassandra, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You still want to do this?" Jimmy nodded. The warehouse looked abandoned. But as soon as the SUV stopped, a door rolled open. Inside, 2 men waited. One of them was the same man who had once handed him that cue card only. Now he wasn't smiling. "You crossed a wire," the man said simply. "I asked a question," Jimmy replied. "It wasn't your question." Jimmy stepped forward. "Then whose was it?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned on a small monitor in the corner of the room. It played real images of past episodes, past interviews, past guests, but something was off. There were visual markers, color-coded highlights, timestamps, blinking icons measuring audience reactions in real time. As if someone had been studying emotional data from live broadcasts. Jimmy stared. "This is behavior analysis." The man nodded. "Media doesn't sell ads anymore. It sells predictability." "Predictability to who?" "Who do you think?" the man said. "Governments, agencies, maybe even competitors. Doesn't matter anymore. You triggered a pattern. You pulled the thread." Jimmy swallowed. "What happens now?" The man looked grim. "Now they'll try to erase the line you crossed." Back in D.C., Diana received the email she'd been waiting for. A direct reply. From Tom Cruise, no press agent, no manager. "Meet me. 9 p.m. Rooftop Lungston Hotel. Come alone." Diana's heart pounded. She closed her laptop and grabbed her coat. Haroon called after her, but she didn't respond. This wasn't something she could explain in bullet points. This was the story. That night, under the dim rooftop lights of the Langston Hotel, Tom Cruise stood in a black coat, arms crossed, waiting. Diana arrived exactly on time. "I thought you'd bring security," he said without turning. "I thought you'd bring a lawyer," she replied. He smiled faintly. "No point. They're already listening." She stepped closer. "Why now, Tom? Why this moment?" He turned to face her, his expression dead serious. "'Cause they crossed the line. Not just with me. With all of us. I've watched good people manipulated into becoming symbols. Puppets in global narratives. Had to become one of them to see it." Diana pulled out a recorder. "Can I ask the hard questions?" Tom nodded. Echo 7. "Is it real?" "Yes." "Were you part of it?" "I was approached. I was briefed. I declined." "Why now? Why go public in such a risky way?" He hesitated. "Because the next step is something worse. A global story written not by writers, but by strategists, actors, delivering lines that serve policy, not truth." Diana was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you have proof?" Tom reached into his coat and handed her a drive. On that drive is a full list of named celebrities. Media hosts, influencers, people used as vessels for influence operations. Some knowingly. You'll also find scripts. They weren't written by screenwriters. Diana took it, her hands shaking slightly. Tom stepped back. "I'll disappear for a while. You won't find me. But this isn't about me anymore. It's about the machine. Break it before it writes the next chapter for us." And with that, he turned and walked into the shadows. Diana stood alone, the city buzzing below her, the drive burning like fire in her pocket.